David Spencer is Head of Crime and Justice at Policy Exchange, a former Detective Chief Inspector in the Metropolitan Police. Thanks for coming on, David. Are these warnings fair? Are they reasonable?
Well, I don't think we should be surprised at these warnings at all, actually. So last week, Policy Exchange published a report on street crime in London. And one of the things that we said was looking at the official data that knife crime offences have increased by 86% in the last decade. And most knife crime offences in London are robberies, and a substantial number of them, it's a mobile phone that gets stolen. So these warnings completely chime with the report and the data that we've published. I think one of the interesting things when we look at this from a sort of visitor's perspective to the city is that knife crime is highly concentrated. And what I mean by that is actually great swathes of London, there is very little or no knife crime at all. Yep. But in 15% of neighbourhoods, those 15% cover half of all knife crime offences. And right at the top of those lists is parts of London's West End. So particularly around Oxford Circus, Regent Street, Piccadilly Circus, those sorts of places where tourists and visitors to the capital visit most, they are the places where knife crime is most prolific. And the flip side of all this is that unfortunately, the Met Police are increasingly poor at dealing with the problem. So only 1 in 20 robberies were solved by the Met last year, and only 1 in 170 theft persons. And that's where a mobile phone gets snatched out of your hand or pickpocketed out of your pocket, that sort of thing. So unfortunately, we're seeing knife crime on the up, and we're seeing the Met's ability to solve these crimes going down.
Is this just a London issue?
Well, we looked at the national data as well, and certainly when we look at the national data on knife crime, that goes up as well, not quite as sharply as London. So over England and Wales, it's up about 78% over the period, so not quite as bad as London, but still pretty bad. But certainly London seems to be the epicentre of the problem. But there are urban centres around the country where this is an issue as well.
Yeah, I don't know whether the figures are still in date, but they're relatively recent figures that suggest actually per capita Birmingham has more of an issue with knife crime than London. But your figures, David, showed that the knife crime in London was very, very concentrated.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really matter which city you're looking at. You always see knife crime concentrating around specific hotspots of crime.
Yeah.
And there are specific parts of the country where knife crime concentrates as well. And they're generally urban centres, so London, Birmingham, Manchester, those sorts of places. But within those cities, again, it concentrates within those cities as well. And as I say, in London, we're looking at the West End.
Do you think the UK, as is detailed on the Australian government website, do you think the UK actually may lack a responsive police force?
Well, certainly when we look at those sort of crime solve rates in London, it's difficult to say that were, if not responsive, certainly successful in the sort of fight against crime. I think when you look as well beyond just the police, because you've got to look at the whole criminal justice system in the whole around this. So if we look at sentencing, for example, the proportion of robbers going to prison when they're convicted has gone down over the last decade. It's gone down from about 66% to about 55%. When we look at the most prolific offenders, so here we're talking about people who have over 45 previous criminal convictions already. When they get convicted of number 46, you would think, well, surely they'll go to prison this time. And actually, in over half of cases, that's not what happens. So actually, the most prolific offenders who we know are committing most crime don't go to prison. So it's not just around policing. In terms of responsiveness, it's the whole system that is problematic at the moment.
Well, I haven't seen that written on an Australian government website, but I'm not sure we're far off it. David, thank you. David Spencer is Head of Crime and Justice at Policy Exchange, former Detective Chief Inspector in the Metropolitan Police.